So what she had started to do were vagina interviews. And there were interviews with over 200 women about how they felt about their vagina, stories, and the way they just related to it. Which Eve Ensler, being a woman with theatrical tastes and inclinations, turned it into a series of Vagina Monologues, which became this fabulous theatrical event with this great campaign that has really come into its own as a mainstream force. They bring forward these issues that you've thought about but never actually have gotten to experience, like the Vagina Workshop, the exploration of the fact that you have a vagina and you have a clitoris and you have the control over these things. And it's just utterly fabulous, and I thoroughly appreciate the Vagina Monologues for their opportunity to bring these things to the forefront.
Every year we sell vagina-shaped lollipops to raise awareness for not only the show but also for vaginas. It's extremely important to use the word vagina because we have this kind of shame around women's bodies and women's sexuality and this kind of like sweeping under the rug of femaleness and just womanhood in general. So embracing the word vagina and vagina-shaped objects, I guess, with the lollipop sales, is so important because it really brings us out of our own little world of like, ew, girls and their bodies are icky, yuck, I don't want that. And there's no discomfort with your own body when you finally realize like, hey, I have a vagina, and that's awesome. The Vagina Monologues is very important because it raises awareness for domestic violence. Every year the proceeds are donated to the Cocoon Shelter, which is Wood County's only domestic violence shelter, and they pretty much exist on donations and get very, very little federal funding. So it's extremely important, the work that we do here in helping to support them and their cause.
The Cocoon Shelter is a shelter for domestic violence victims. It's emergency safe housing. All our donations and the donations from this play go to help provide food to victims, provides electricity to the shelter so we can run, cleaning products and toiletries, just gas to get victims to doctor's appointments and to important events like that. That's what the money goes for, and we couldn't run without it.
We have the silent witnesses set up to show that domestic violence and violence against women doesn't happen out there and away from our communities. It happens here. It happens in Bowling Green, and more often than not, we know someone that it has happened to, and so it's just a reminder that this happens to people we know and around us. 5 to 15% of the proceeds that go to V-Day to help them spread the word to places like Haiti and things like that, so they can get funded to bring V-Day and the Vagina Monologues everywhere. Spotlight Monologue this year is about Miriam Merlet. She's an activist. She was an activist in Haiti, and she brought V-Day and the Vagina Monologues to Haiti actually, but she died in the earthquake, and so it's a poem in memory of her, which is awesome. I'm doing Because He Liked to Look at It. So I'm going to be talking about reintroducing myself to my vagina and loving it again.
Last year I also performed with a woman who loved to make vaginas happy. In that particular monologue, my character is a late 30s, early 40s former tax lawyer who has decided to be less concerned with revenue and more concerned with actually helping other people find what makes them happy. I keep doing this because I have a 9-year-old daughter. I do not want her to grow up afraid or ashamed of being female. I want her to know that she has within herself all she needs to be complete.
Tonight I did The Flood and Angry Vagina. I think from The Flood it's funny, but it's also touching. Her story is about how she's kind of afraid of her sexuality. She's afraid of being a woman, and she talks multiple times about how she doesn't look at her vagina, she doesn't see her vagina, and she's never talked to anybody about it before. And through this monologue, she feels better because she did talk about it, and she feels more comfortable with her sexuality and her being a woman. Angry Vagina is more the woman venting. She thinks that tampons are awful, that thongs are terrible. She hates the medical exams on vaginas. are just a few examples. But she's really angry about those things and wants people to know that it should be changed.
Say is about comfort women, which was during World War II in Japan. There's this sort of just like a really horrific situation where they convinced women to come out and try to support their country, but they're actually just being brought into sex slavery, more or less. But the government's refusing to acknowledge it, so they're still waiting. They're becoming old now, obviously, and they're just trying to get that apology before they pass. So as the monologue progressed, it also became choppier. Like we started going like rapid fire. Towards the end, we were starting to like bite off the end of each other's lines and just make it really intense. So the audience was jerking their heads, just trying to keep up and not knowing who was going to speak next. So we're just trying to use that to emphasize the just the brutality of it all, making it real intense, and to show how imperative it is for these women to get this need addressed by the Japanese government.
I did My Vagina is a Village. I was the most recent memory of the girl after she had been raped and after her village had been destroyed. There's me and another girl, and we're both being the same woman, and she's talking about how her life used to be before the tragedies that happened to her and how happy she is, and then I say, yeah, but not since this. I don't feel those happy things. Now I only feel terrible, grotesque things because of what has happened to me. So it's just this back and forth, and at the end we come together and like, no, this isn't okay anymore. I can't pretend that it didn't happen to me. It's about the revolution in like Bosnia and Kosovo, where they used it as a strategy of war to destroy villages and rape women. Like, felt really strongly about this one because my mom and my dad's girlfriend have been sexually assaulted and raped, and like at first I didn't really want this monologue because it was too sad and it was too gruesome, but I talked to both of them about it and they said, yeah, but people need to hear those stories, and like we've been there and we want to hear those stories and people need to know it. So it's like, even though it's a hard thing to say and it's not like a funny one that you get to make the audience laugh, people have to hear that.
I would say that it is a series of conversations from women, by women, about women, that allow not only women the opportunity to speak, but also allow women to be heard.